In this video, I'll build a sample application that uses the Microsoft AJAX Control Toolkit's cascading drop-down control extenders. So just so that we have a frame of reference for what we're building, this is the sample website that ships with the AJAX Control Toolkit, and here's the sample for the cascading drop-down. Notice that each one of these drop-downs has a value context that's based on the choice that's made in the previous box. So for example, only the car, we're selecting a car make and model here and color, and only the car's make is available for selection. Then once I choose a make, notice it says loading model, and then after a little bit of delay, we now have models, and the models that are available for selection in this box are only Audi models. So what's actually happening here is that the control extender is extending these drop-down lists, and after I leave one list, it's calling a web service, passing in the parameters of the known types and the category that got selected, and then returning the values that are for the drop-down that are specific to the choice that was made in the previous drop-down. So, for example, if I choose an Audi A6, now I can select the color, and the only color that's available is cyan. And then once I've selected all three, we get this little message about the car that we've chosen. So that's the model for the application that we're going to build. Let's do this by go ahead and getting started, selecting create a new website, and I'll select an AJAX Control Toolkit website, and we'll call it DD Lists, just working with some drop-down lists. Now the first thing is, in order to get those car make, model, and colors, we need a data source for those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an XML file as that data source. So I'm going to grab an existing XML file that contains that hierarchical information, and I'm going to drop it in my app_data folder. And if we look at it, you can see here's the car's makes, the various models, and the colors. So we selected an Audi A6. This was the make that we selected. Here's the model that I selected, and cyan was the one color that was available. So this is what we're going to use to populate the values in our drop-down boxes. Next, we need a web service that we can call to retrieve those values. So I'll right-click on my solution and say Add a web service, and let's call this Cars Service, and I'm going to place the code in a separate file, meaning I prefer to use code behind when I write ASP.NET applications. So here is our Cars Service class, and this is where we're going to define those methods. The first thing that I need to do, though, this is a standard web method class, and I want to specify that these are going to be script callable methods. So even though we inherit from system.web.services.webService, so that this class implements web services, I want to implement web service methods that can be called from Ajax-style client-side JavaScript. So to do that, I'm going to add a reference to system.web.script.services.script service, and this will tell a runtime that these are script callable services. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple of object instances that we need, and so I'm just using some code snippets that I've pre-written. So these aren't things that the AJAX Control Toolkit is supposed to install. It's just so that you don't have to watch me type all of this stuff out by hand. So here we're creating two objects. One is an XML document, and this is undefined because in order to get access to the XML document type, I need to import the namespace for system.xml. So let's do that. All right, and now that'll be defined. Note here also, I'm not newing up an instance of XML document. I'll do that in a little bit, but I'm also creating this generic object instance called lock, and I'm newing up an instance of that. And that's because we're going to populate the data in our XML document from the carsservice.xml file. And since that's a file that lives in the file system, even though for this demo it's really, strictly speaking, not necessary because there's only me as a single user is going to be accessing that file, in a production environment which is inherently multi-user, we want to make sure that we add some code to manage the occurrence where two users try and access a file system resource at the same time. So just to be a good practice programmer, we're going to add a little locking mechanism to the file access as well. Right. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a property for our document. So let's walk through quickly what it is that this actually does. So I've created a read-only property, which means that there's only a get accessor and no set accessor. The first thing where I'm doing is saying check and see if the document object, this document, is nothing. And if that's false, meaning it's something, then go ahead and go to the end and just return the value for the document. But if it is nothing, then we're going to have to load the XML document from the file system. So we're going to create that sync lock, and then we'll new up an instance of the XML document because even though we've declared it, we haven't allocated it yet. And then once we've done that, we can say document.load HTTP context current.server.map path, and then map a path to the cars service XML file, which we placed in our app_data folder. Right? And so once we've done that, either way, when we get to this point, we have a valid XML document stored in the in this underscore document object, and it's been populated with the hierarchical data that's found in the car service.xml file. So we can go ahead and return that that XML document. Now the next thing we need, remember that we have hierarchical data here. So the three cascading drop-down boxes have a hierarchy, and that hierarchy is represented in the XML. So the hierarchy is make, then model, then color. Now, we need to be able to let this query make a decision in terms of what to return based on the state in the hierarchy where our query is being made. So in order to do that, we're going to have access to the hierarchy information. And here I've just created also a read-only property for hierarchy, and we're just statically defining the hierarchy here. Right? So just created an array of strings and defining the make and model, which are the hierarchy. So the next thing that I need to do is define the actual method that can be used to return the values that we want to populate in our drop-down lists. So to do that, we define this web method. It's really quite simple. Right? So the first thing we're doing is I've gotten rid of the hello world and renamed the method get drop-down contents. And we're passing in two values. Right? The two values that we're passing in is one is known category values, and the other is the category that we want to be displaying. And note here that we're not returning a string anymore, but instead we're returning a type that's newly defined in the AJAX control toolkit, and that type is cascading drop-down name value. Right? And then inside our method here, we do just two things. First, we need to get a dictionary of the known category value pairs. So I'm dimming up a string dictionary that I'm calling known category values dictionary, right? And it's just a regular string dictionary. And then I'm assigning the value to the known category values dictionary by calling a method that's defined in the AJAX control toolkit. Right? So we're calling AJAX control toolkit cascading dropdown, which is the control extender that we're working with, and then the method on that type is parse known category value string, right? And then just passing in the known category values. Then all we need to do is make a simple query against the document, the XML document that contains the hierarchical data, and return the results of that simple query. So to do that, we're saying return from the AJAX control toolkit, again cascading dropdown, and this time we're calling the method query simple cascading dropdown document. And to call that, we have four values that we need to pass in as parameters. One is the XML document that contains the data. Two is the definition of the hierarchy, which we defined in the property called hierarchy. Next is the known category values dictionary that we created. And last, the category that we want to retrieve the values for. Right? And that's it. That's our web service. So now we're free to go ahead and start to define our user interface. So let's go ahead and save that. And now we can go over to our default.aspx page. Now, we're going to do a couple things here. Let's mock up a little bit of the user interface to get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is go down and grab, from my AJAX Extensions Toolbox tab, I'm going to grab an update panel, drop that onto the page. Then I'm going to go back up to my standard ASP.NET controls, and I'm going to grab a drop-down list control, and I'm going to we'll just size that out a little bit. Now, we need one drop-down list for each of the three categories. So one for make, one for model. Right. So let's and one for color. And on the last of the three drop-down lists, let's enable auto postback on that one, because when the user has selected values in all three drop-down boxes, then we need to call an event handling method to create the text string that we're going to put back in a label to give the user some feedback about the car that they've chosen. So in order to do that, we need to include a label inside our update panel here. And update panels, if you're new to Microsoft AJAX, update panel is an AJAX control. It's part of the core ASP.NET 2.0 extensions for AJAX. And update panel implements the common AJAX pattern of partial page update. So the whole page won't get updated, only the things inside the update panel will get updated. And I've done a couple of how do I videos specifically on the update panel if you're interested. So here's here's our label. One thing I want to do is go in on that label and just get rid of the default text so it has no value when it's empty. Right? And now let's add the AJAX Control Toolkit specific controls. What I want to do is I want to grab a cascading drop-down control from the AJAX Toolkit tab that we created manually when we installed the AJAX Control Toolkit. This is just telling us that because we selected an AJAX Control Toolkit project type, an instance of the DLL already exists in the bin directory. If we had created just a standard MS AJAX website project, we probably wouldn't get that message the first time that we tried to use one of the toolkit controls. This is called the cascading drop-down control, but in reality, this is a Microsoft AJAX control extender. And control extenders are an interesting concept that's developed by the Microsoft AJAX team, and that is that control extenders are AJAX constructs that are used to extend the visual properties or the behaviors of existing ASP.NET server-side controls. So the control extenders are developed to extend a specific type of control or controls. In this case, cascading drop-down control extenders are specifically designed to extend drop-down list controls. And for each one of the drop-down list controls that I want to use in this cascade, I need one cascading drop-down control extender. So 3 drop-down lists, 3 cascading drop-down controls. And now we're ready to wire them up. But before we do that, I want to use this as an opportunity to introduce one more interesting feature that is part of the Microsoft ASP.NET AJAX Extensions programming experience. We've developed in our application here, we've created a web service. And this web service has the web method that will be used to query our data, our hierarchical XML data, based on the selection that's been made in a drop-down list, and then return the values for the next drop-down list. But there's another way that we might do this. So Microsoft AJAX introduces this idea of page-level service methods. So because of the nature of AJAX programming, where your page might be carrying on a conversation with a server, it's fine to be able to have a full-blown web service like our car service ASMX here, but maybe that's overkill. Maybe we just need to call a method. We're never going to call the method anywhere other than this page, the page that it's on, and we don't want to have to define a separate car service ASMX and write the code behind, and perhaps this is in a different project than our solutions, so we have multiple deployment steps. Maybe it's just simple. It's never going to be used anywhere other than the page, so we want that service method to be bound to the page that's going to call it. Well, we can do that with Microsoft AJAX. So what we'll implement here is something called a page method, and to do that, let's go in and we need to start by saying we're going to add script to our ASPX page, and that script is going to run at the server, right? And now we can add the web service specific code for our page method. Now, this is just VB code, so we could do anything that we wanted here. In our case, though, we're not going to duplicate the logic that we've already defined in the car service ASMX files. So we'll just create a page method that serves as a broker to call the method in our car service web service. Right. So here's our code. Right. So again, I've just used a snippet to copy and paste this in, but let's describe what it does. Right. So here we have this function. It must be defined as a public shared function, and we've named it getDropDownContents page method. So getDropDownContents is the name of the method that we define in our ASMX file, and we've appended page method. Right. That's just the naming convention that I've used. There are no dependencies there. Next, because this page level web method is just going to be a broker to our full-blown web service, I need to gather and propagate the two parameters that the ASMX web service will expect. So again, as we saw when we defined the web service, we have the known category values as a string, and then the category that we want to be working with as a string. And again, we're returning an instance of cascading drop-down name values from the that's defined in the AJAX control toolkit. Right? And then the simple thing here is we're just newing up an instance of that cars service, calling the getDropDownContents method, again in our ASMX, and passing in the category values and the category that are being passed to our page method here. And that's it. That's all we're doing. So we're just calling the web service, but brokering it through our page method. Now, the two things that are important here, because this method is being defined here locally in the page, we need to specify that this method is in fact going to be a web method. And we also need to add the script method attribute so that this can be called from JavaScript that's here on our page. Right? That's it. And now that we have that method in place, we are free to go and start to configure our user interface. So here are the three cascading drop-down control extenders, and if we go over and look at the properties collection for this control extender, you'll note that this field called target control ID, and this is where I make the association between the ASP.NET controls and the AJAX controls that I want them to interact with. So remember I said that each control extender is configured to extend specific types of controls, and the Visual Web Developer, Visual Studio, is smart enough to know which ones that they are. So here in the Target Control ID property box, I can do a drop-down, and notice it only shows me drop-down control list. It doesn't show me the label control. And the reason is that Visual Studio is able to understand through reflection that the cascading drop-down control extenders extend ASP.NET drop-down list controls, and it can enumerate all of the drop-down list controls that are instanced on this page, and then build this list. So I'm going to select drop-down 1 for the extender number 1. I'm going to select drop-down 2 for the extender number 2, and drop-down 3 for the extender number 3. Oops. Okay, now I want to select the drop-down list, and let's take another look at the properties for the drop-down list control. Right. So note here there are all the drop-down list control properties that we would expect under normal circumstances. But in addition, because I've used the extenders on this page and I've associated one of these extenders with the drop-down list control instance that we're looking at, the extender has inserted these new properties into the properties collection for the drop-down list 1 control. And here are all the properties that we need to configure in order to get our cascading drop-down functionality working. So the first thing is we need to specify the category of the data that we're going to be working with for this first drop-down, and the category is make, right? So the make of the car. And then loading text. Now remember, we're going to be making a little call to a web service, and we're not going to have to write the code to do this manually. We're just going to configure how these things work. But the cascading drop-down extenders that come with the AJAX control toolkit actually have client-side code that's going to make the call out to the service method. And because that service method call is going to take place over the network, there might be a little bit of latency there. So we want to provide a message that tells the user that that data is in the process of being loaded. So we'll specify, we'll say loading car makes, and Parent control ID, there isn't one for this particular instance because this is the first drop-down list in the group of 3 that are going to cascade, so there's no parent to the first one. Some prompt text, we can just say, please select a car make. Right? It's just a prompt for the user. We don't want a selected value by default. And here's where we define the web service that will be used to get the values for the dropdown. So the method that we said we were going to use is get dropdown contents, and the service path. So this is the name of the method, but we need to know how to get to the service. So the service is carsservice.asmx. Now, because our carsservice.asmx file is in this project, that's all we need is the file name. But if this were in a different solution or in a different endpoint altogether on our server somewhere, then we would need to specify a resolvable path to the service. Right? But that's all we need for this version. Right? So now if I select the second drop-down list, here's where we're going to do something a little bit different. So again, we'll scroll down. We'll find the properties that are inserted by the extender controls. And the category for the second drop-down list is going to be the models. So we'll say category is model. And then loading text, we can add similar thing. Loading car models. And in this case, because this is not the first control in the cascading hierarchy, we need to specify the control name of the parent. So in this case, the parent control ID is going to be drop-down list 1, the previous drop-down list. And we want to make sure we spell that right. All right, so drop-down list 1, the prompt text will just be, please select a model. We don't want a default value selected. And here's where we're going to do something different. For this instance of the drop-down list number 2, we're going to use the page method instead of calling into the method in our ASMX file. We're actually going to use the page method here. So remember, we called that page method get drop-down contents page method. All right, get drop-down contents page method. And for service path, well, in drop-down list number 1, we had to specify the name of the ASMX file that was the entry point to our web service code. But in this case, the service path is the currently executing page. So the method is defined inside default.aspx. So because the service method lives in the page that's going to be calling it, we don't need to add a service path, right? And then lastly, we'll configure the third drop-down list. So again, go down and find the extenders properties that get installed. Category here is going to be color. Little loading text, we'll just say loading colors. And parent control ID is going to be the drop-down list number 2, the previous one. And the prompt text will be, please select the color. We don't want a default value selected. And in fact, in the case of this application, we can't pre-select because we don't know what the choices will be. And now we need a service method and a service path. And so in this case, we'll use the method that's in the ASMX web service that we defined. So it will be get down contents. And the service path will be carsservice.asmx. And now we've got one more little piece of functionality that we need to add. Remember, when the user selects the third and final value in the 3 cascading dropdowns, then we want to display some feedback to the user. So let's go into the code behind for our default.aspx page, and in here we want to create an event for dropdown list number 3, and the event handler will be selected index changed. And then we've just got a little bit of VB code here. So inside the event handler for selected index changed on the 3rd drop-down list, we're just going to gather the values from each of those drop-downs and say, look, if the make is empty, then reprompt for select the make. Basically, if somehow the user has managed to change the value in the 3rd drop-down list and not have completed one of the other values, then we're going to provide them with the feedback that they need to fully select all of the values for make, model, and color. And if they've done that, then we're going to give them this formatted message that says you've chosen a whatever. So it's color, make, and model. So a red Audi A6, nice car. Right. And having said that, let's fire off our application here. And note that as it comes up, the first of our drop-downs is populated. We'll make this change. There'll be just a little bit of latency, so keep your eye out open for the loading message. Not so it happened too fast. So we'll select one, select the color. Now, I'll warn you that when we make this selection, remember this is the selection that's going to cause an auto postback, and this is probably going to cause an error. Yes, so what this tells us is invalid postback or callback argument. Event validation is enabled using pages enable event validation equals true. This is on by default, and if this is on by default, this is just a security measure, and we could explicitly authorize the events that we wanted to be able to post back to the server. In our case, I'll cover that topic in detail in a later How Do I video, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to go back into my page directive, and I'm going to say enable event validation equal false. So I'm just going to turn event validation off. And again, you might not want to ubiquitously do that for security purposes. It'll be up to you to determine the semantics of your application and whether that should be turned on or not. But in our case, just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to turn event validation off so that I don't have to explicitly define the event that we're going to handle. And then having done that, we can go down and select all 3 values, and voila, we have the completed application. You've chosen a silver Audi S4. And that's it. That's all it takes to get started using the cascading drop-down control extenders that ship with the Microsoft AJAX Control Toolkit.